Welcome to the Very Liberal podcast with me, Lembit,
and me, Mark Oaten.
as we review the stupidest timing decision in the history of modern politics, the general election on the 4th of July. I always said it was going to be on the 4th of July.
I mean, the timing's not great for anybody, let alone the Tory party. But I called you. I was boarding a plane to, I don't know, Helsinki or somewhere. I said, Lembit, what are we going to do? We're going to have to do a podcast. And Lembit said, no, it's not going to be till October, November. Who's saying there's going to be an election anyway?
He told me so. He told me so.
The Prime Minister. It caught us all out. It caught us all out.
Oh, you're being magnanimous now. This is strange because Mark was I was wrong. Why? Because I have some political nous. And Mark and Rishi Sunak do not. This is the stupidest timing decision ever.
I mean, it seems to have caught everybody out, including the Conservative Party. And I know a lot of Conservative MPs were thinking, look, we're going to lose our seats. At least give us August so we can have a nice summer, be paid over the summer recess. And then we'll have a go at trying to save our seats in October. But at least we can have a few more months. Now, literally, they're going to be on the job heap in the summer. I think they're scared stiff.
In the old days, we called it the dole.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them aren't going to be re-employable, not on the basis of what they've done. What do you think is the reason why he's gone for the 4th of July, which is 5 months before he realistically had to run? Because you and I were arguing about October, November, then you got the kind of feel that it was going to be in July.
I mean, I always thought it would be based on the economy and he'd want to play that long. Now, the only argument that I've heard, which is slightly credible, is that the interest rates may not be coming down as fast and as quickly as he hoped. So whereas the Bank of England were hinting it could be the summertime when they came down, the latest hints were we might have to wait till September, October. So he may have thought, actually, I'm not going to get that good news. He probably thought that the inflation figure coming down was a good springboard to actually announce the election. But at the end of the day, I think what was on his mind more than anything else was, I've got very little control over anything at the moment. The one thing I can control is the timing of this election. So let me actually show I've got a bit of guts. I'm up for this. I've got a plan and I'm going to call the election. He hoped it would make him feel like he was in some kind of strong position with strong leadership. And then the heavens opened and he got soaked.
Before that, though, there's a simpler explanation. The school term in America. He wanted to get the election over so he could leave and join Nick Clegg, the worst leader of the Democrats.
Don't start that again.
That's a fact.
It's not.
That's not an opinion. It's a fact.
It's not a fact.
So he's going to go to America.
Let's look at the launches. How have they gone for the various parties? Do you think?
You've already hinted at maybe not the driest, crispest launch for Rishi Sunak.
I mean, why not an umbrella? I don't understand. I know that when you're a football manager and you're on the touchline, the last thing you ever do is hold an umbrella up. It happened for one of the managers, Steve McManaman, I think, and it crucified him. But you're the prime minister of the country. You go out, you're launching a campaign, you want to look credible, and you're soaked. It's breathtaking.
He's got more in common with Captain E. Smith. Do you know who that was?
Who's E. Smith?
He was in charge of the Titanic.
Well, of course, he then went to Belfast. It was filmed in front of the Titanic.
It's incredible. Just to underline this point, talk about a sinking ship motif. And so he does this drowned rat thing, all that music and noise in the background, things can only get better. Of course, leading to the best headline, which I'm sure you saw in the Telegraph.
No, go on.
Things can only get wetter.
Yeah. But he's not the only leader who's got wet this week, is he?
That's true. Your mate.
And yours.
Orange Booker. Well, I used to share an office with him, actually. That's true. Nice bloke.
Yeah.
Ed Davey, we're talking about, the Liberal Democrat leader. He decides to embark on a series of stunts.
I'm torn on this. Do we want to show our politicians have got a sense of humour? Can they shake things up a little bit? He was also trying to make a serious point about the problem of sewage in our rivers and lakes. Or do you say, look, this was just a headline, which was always going to be negative? You remember when Neil Kinnock was walking along the beach in Blackpool, I think it was, and a wave came and got him soaked. These can be memorable images. I actually think Ed can get away with this because he wants to highlight a serious issue around sewage.
Well, then he went to Wales for the Welsh launch. I used to be leader of the Welsh Lib Dems. You're never leader of a party. You're never leader of a party, were you?
No, I wasn't.
I did my best, but things happened.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on, it's not about us, not all about us. He gets on a bicycle and careers down a hill with his gormless smile. Now, I like Ed Davey, but is it just going to be stunt after stunt? it's all downhill from here on would be the headline for that one.
But at least there's been something interesting to talk about with the Prime Minister of Ed Davey. When it comes to Keir Starmer, I mean, I'm really, talk about another wet launch in a sense. It's just wet and damp and soggy. There's nothing of any real substance. And he just seems to be terrified to do or say anything. And I think this could actually backfire during the campaign. I get the strategy. Don't offend anybody. Make sure that you can demonstrate the Labour Party has changed. But you've got to sustain that for 5 or 6 weeks. Aren't the electors just going to get really bored? And actually, are they going to think, we really want to understand what the real person is here? Nothing is coming through yet.
He actually went to a school which became a private school, but he wants to put tax on private schools. I've weirdly called public schools in this country, but one where the parents pay the fees. He goes on about being underprivileged and everything else, but everything about him talks privilege. And fundamentally, to have an election slogan which is one word, change. What's he mean? Small change? It's just, there's nothing there. You can't grasp it. In the next podcast, let's talk about all the policies and everything else. But in terms of the messaging here, there is nothing. All he's saying is, I'm not conservative, but he is.
But maybe that's what he needs to do. I mean, we know when it came to the 2019 election, there were a lot of Liberal voters, a lot of Conservative voters who were not happy. They wanted to vote in a different way. They were so scared of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour left that they stuck with the Conservatives. And that was a huge problem for the Lib Dems and Labour. We know that his strategy has to be to avoid that happening, to make sure that people are not scared of him. There's no fear of Labour. And I think he's achieved that. Can he get to the next level, which there is enthusiasm to vote for him, rather than just blandness around him? Well, he's still got weeks. He's still got some weeks to go.
Well, he's got 5 weeks or whatever number of weeks that are left to completely reinvent his personality. It's not going to happen, Mark.
I think that Paddy Ashdown once described this to me, maybe to the Parliamentary Party. He said, when you're leader of the party during an election campaign, it's like carrying a very, very rare vase, and you've got to get it from this side of the room to the other side of the room. And your only job is to make sure you get it from A to B without it falling and crashing around you. And I think that's what Starmer's trying to do. Whether he can do it, I suspect he can. Whether those around him in the party can hold their nerve and not say anything stupid for the next few weeks, that remains to be seen.
But already he's dropped the vase. Diane Abbott, who I think is really not fit for government, has been essentially excluded from the Labour Party's campaign plan from a time when she was the doyen of the left. She was going to be the Home Secretary, even though she, I think, planned to pay police officers £30 a year. And so
that's not dropping the vase. That's holding on to the vase. I think the smartest thing that he can do to demonstrate that Labour have changed is to make Abbott stands independent, and this week Jeremy Corbyn will be putting his nomination papers in the seat that he has held for Labour for 40 years. He's now having to stand as an independent, and that's a great symbol for Starmer to show the party's change.
Right. I hope that Jeremy wins. I like him. I think he was principled. He's not my politics, but I think he actually stood for something. I think Diane Abbott, she's just not that gifted. Let me be polite about it. Okay, I think she's thick. I think she's thick.
I did Celebrity University Challenge with Diane Abbott, and
I take it you lost.
We lost. I remember we were
by a lot.
We were doing the buzzer in the rehearsals to see whether it worked, and Jeremy Paxman turned around after I'd been buzzing it and said, "I doubt we'll be hearing much more of that buzzer from you, will we?" But to be fair, I got, I think, one more question right than Diane Abbott got on that program. We were a disastrous team.
She did Mastermind, which I did. I came second.
Did you? What, out of how many?
4.
Okay, right.
Like usual. They're not going to ask you, are they? And Diane Abbott didn't do the same show, but she
What's her specialist subject? Maths?
I can't even remember. I think my righteous indignation, in which case she'd have actually done very well in the specialist round. So I think she's poor as a politician. But I have to tell you, I think she's been completely mistreated by the Labour Party. She's done 40 years, well, 37 years as an MP. And whatever I think of her personally, if I was in the Labour Party, I'd be railing against this mediocre, right-leaning, Keir Starmer character who could just as well run the Conservative Party. So against my feelings about Diane Abbott, I think she's been wronged. And I think that the left is going to react to that. And all those people who are already unhappy with the Labour Party because they support this Netanyahu attack on Gaza where over 30,000 civilians have been killed, they're all going to say, well, actually, we're just going to find something else like Galloway's Workers' Party.
But where else are they going to vote? And I think that's the calculation.
Galloway's Workers' Party.
There's not enough people standing for that party. Starmer's taken a calculated judgment that they'll probably vote Labour anyway. But by having them distant, he can bring over more of those swing Conservative voters. But Lembit, it's not just going to be Diane Abbott who's not standing next election. There's a record number, is it 120 MPs, nearly all of them Conservatives, who are not standing.
Well, most of them. You're exaggerating.
Okay,
a lot. That's a spin.
A lot of them, and some big names in there as well.
Michael Gove, he's decided to leave for now. I could imagine him going off, making a packet, coming back. But what's the point of him being in opposition when he was actually a serious contender for Prime Minister? Andrea Leadsom, I doubt we'll see her in Parliament again, but once again, she'll have a good career there, somewhere else in the world. And you've got a whole raft of other people who aren't really household names. Wallace, who used to be Defence Minister, Secretary. I think, Defence Secretary. And they're just deciding. It's always a good clue, by the way, to see who's losing the most MPs. Deciding it's just not worth the candle to spend 5 years in opposition.
Or they want to resign before the electorate throw them out as well. I mean, there is that element that some people will just look at the maths, they'll see it, they'll have heard the rumours in their own constituency, and some of them will think, do you know what, I'd rather go out in a dignified way and resign rather than lose like some people have done in the past.
Yes, I lost. Yes. I had the courage to stand, Mark. You were one of the people who walked. Let's be clear. He didn't have the courage to face the electorate. I went down in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, absolutely. But what it does tell us, though, is that if you've got 100 or so not standing next time round, then you assume maybe there'll be 70, 80, 100 that lose their seats. We're looking at 200 or so brand new MPs coming into Parliament. That's almost a third of Parliament. That's going to change the dynamics.
It will do, particularly for the Conservatives, because they're just going to end up with a rump. But then at the same time, the Labour Party is going to have all the newbies, possibly half of their parliamentary party. I'm already concerned about the standard of politicians, whether people liked us or didn't like us, Mark. At least we had some kind of base. We came from somewhere in politics, and I think now there'll be shoe-ins, people who've done nothing else in politics and just come straight in, like Nick Clegg.
That's I think there is a bit of a sort of a nostalgic view that we have of politicians in the past.
You mean we're patronizing?
Yeah, basically, you know, we can all go back and say, where are the big beasts of the Blair cabinets, the Blunkets and the Straws, or where are the Heseltines and the Ken Clarks? You know, these were household names, but at the time they were probably being criticized just as much as the current crop of politicians are.
No, it's changed. It's worse. Now we get people who don't want to achieve a certain thing. I've always had this libertarian agenda. I guess that's why we do the Very Liberal podcast. And I've always been driven by that. These people just want to be politicians. You saw that with Boris Johnson. He wanted to be prime minister. When he got the job, it's just, let's have a party, you know. And it's like, that's about it. Let's go and see Zelensky a few times. He bangs the table, says, "Give me more money." He doesn't save him. And we've got Starmer in the same situation. Now, I think that Ed Davey's got a bit more depth, I have to say. I've got legion complaints about the Lib Dems, but I do think he stands for something. He understands, for example, dealing with a child with challenges, with disability, because he has one. And so on. And I take that.
I mean, Ed is a decent guy, and I'll give you a small anecdote. Ed and I, back in 1996, were trying to get selected for parliamentary seats. And I was shortlisted for his seat in Kingston. The two of us were up against each other. And he beat me, hands down, absolutely. He got the selection. He had the decency to call me the next day and say, "Look,
I won.
Yeah, no,
Bye.
I won. But don't be downhearted. You were very good, Mark, and keep at it and stick at it. And actually, that's exactly what I needed to hear. He needn't have done that. He's a decent guy. I worry about.
He did 26 times better than you in his majority. That year.
Just for those that don't know, I got 2, and he got 56 majority.
Oh, okay. He did even better in that case. Yeah.
What's it like at the moment for? I mean, for Ed and Starmer and Rishi, of course, it's just crazy. But for most of those standing, they're in their constituencies now. We're a week into the campaign. I remember that feeling of, constant anxiety and worry. Are the leaflets going out? Has that poster gone up? Have we answered that piece of casework? Is my team doing everything they should be doing? And at the same time, you have to keep your energy levels up, running around, canvassing, doing media interviews. It's a huge demand on individuals, whatever you think about politicians.
In 2005, I really enjoyed the campaign. It was clear I was going to win. I had the biggest majority up to that point in the history of the constituency. It was actually a fairly safe ride. I helped others as well, including other Lib Dems and so on.
I hope it was Lib Dems you helped them,
unlike you and your Blair love, your love of Blair, your bromance with him. And then in 2010, I was unsettled. I felt that I was maybe going to lose. My team said, no, we'll be okay. Even the Conservatives thought on the day of the election that I'd win by 3,000. But I was unsettled, and I did not enjoy the 2010 general election. It's made worse now because we more or less knew when the 2010 election would be. This time, as you said yourself, even the Conservative backbenchers didn't know this was happening. I suspect I don't even think that the cabinet realized it was going to happen.
But I mean, the mechanics also of an election are hugely different from when you and I were standing. I mean, I'm supporting a number of seats and involved in their campaigns. And the amount of computer technology, the information that is being gathered on voters, the different forms of target letters shooting out at various points, it is complicated. It is actually quite a difficult mechanism to actually put in place in a 5-week period. And I'm actually quite enjoying it this time around. But
because you're not standing.
Yeah.
That's why there's no pressure.
But understanding some of the terminology and the techniques and the way in which, I mean, we have in the party this thing called minivan. So you're out canvassing and everything's going on your phone. And I mean, really, we used to have wet, soggy canvas cards back in the day. Now the technology has taken over. I think it's a good thing, but I do miss a soggy canvas card.
That's why I lost, because all the Lib Dems bled into the Conservative column. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's true, it's more difficult, but in a way, it's more straightforward too. Having said that, what would you give for the Amazon database? You could probably work out exactly how everyone's going to vote and influence them then.
Quick thoughts on some of the policy issues that have been discussed this week. I mean, the Conservatives have done a big bid to try and keep that reform vote down with their national insurance, national service rather. National insurance they're cutting, national service they want to introduce. What do you think of that?
Well, we're going to go into this more in the next podcast, but essentially they've all been doing brush strokes. When you get close, it's like an impressionistic painting. You won't understand that because you're not very
Monet.
Wow. Okay, impressive. You get close, it's just lines. When you get close to all of these policy areas, it's just lines. There's no detail. So I think essentially what they're talking about now is big picture stuff. And that's why we need to drill down into the policies the next time. I don't think anyone's scored a big victory yet. Change, the word change is all that Labour Party is saying. The inference is it's no change for the Tories. Actually, there's going to be no change with either of them. The one person, in fairness, who's made a bit more of an impact in a superficial way is Ed Davey, because he's done these stunts. But that's not solid. It's not policy. He's not being reported for anything other than water contamination. Oh, yes, this is the other thing. He jumps into the water in Windermere to highlight, you know what's coming now, because this is a real bugbear for me. He jumps into the water to explain how dangerous it is to be in the water. And then he gets out and he does it 5 times. This stunt only works, folks, if he gets ill now. Otherwise, he's disproving his own point.
And on that note, I think we'll go and get some diarrhea tablets for him, send them to him. But when we come back at the next podcast, let's get into some of those policy issues in more detail.
If you want to know more about what we're doing, go to this location and you'll find all of our podcasts there. And also at the next podcast, we'll be talking about our take on policies from all the parties. I'm Lembit.
And I'm Mark Oaten.
Thanks for watching.